Hello again, friends out in YouTube land. Asenva here for a tutorial. So one of the greatest fears I think in the BJD hobby is the dreaded fear of having to restring your doll. Today I'm here to bust those myths and tell you it really honestly isn't as scary as it may seem. Before that, let's just talk a little bit about when you might think it's time to restring your doll. So I have my girl here and she's pretty loose. I honestly sometimes will still keep them this loose on the shelf. But typically you'll know it's time when you see something like that. Like she's just not sitting up anymore, like she's that loose. So to restring you're gonna need a couple of tools, and I feel so bad. Like many of you may or may not know, I moved, and so a lot of my stuff is in storage right now, and I actually do have a pair of forceps, which would be fantastic to show you in this video, but I do not have them. So I'm going to show you kind of an alternate method if you don't have forceps. Some other tools you might consider, a pair of pliers. Some people also, which another thing I don't have is it's like a knitting or like a crochet hook. It's basically like a metal stick with a hook at the end. Some people like to use that during the restringing process. I personally like to use a ribbon or a string. So I'm actually going to be using like a really old elastic that I've just kept, and I'm probably just going to use this guy today to help me thread it through. And then you're going to need some elastic. Now this is where the fun part comes in. What elastic do you replace old elastic with? So when you do a search for this kind of elastic, this is actually labeled more as bungee cord. I went ahead and I did a search on Amazon, and I did happen to find pretty much like the standard sizes that you would use in BJDs. Feel free to check out my Amazon list down below to take a look at those. Now, the thing is though, is that even though you might see that there might be like a standard size, sometimes they don't fit. Like this cord, for example, was fitted for SD dolls, or 1/3 scale size dolls, and I tried to put it into my, at the time it was my Resin Soul Gang's body, and it did not, this was too thick. Even though this was like considered SD cord or elastic, it did not fit. So I actually kind of had to pry open the S hooks a little bit to kind of put it in there. To put in the hooks, and I made some adjustments that way. But it's very important that you know what kind of elastic your doll is going to need. So here I have some different elastics listed for you. At least it'll be a good starting point for you. Because typically they all use different size elastics. They're usually measured out by millimeters, and sometimes another thing you just want to take a look at too is that the elastic that they use in their arms sometimes can be different than the ones that are used in the legs. So just kind of be aware of that. But for the most part, you should be able to buy the same size like elastic for the whole body, for the arms and the legs. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get her down to her bare minimum, and we'll show you how to restring your doll. So tip number 1, to help you get that S hook out, there's many ways that you can get it out. Sometimes, I mean, you might be strong enough to pull this out and then twist it. If you are not strong enough to do that, or maybe you have, joint problems or something, you can use the string or a ribbon, and you can loop it through and then pull it up and then turn your head. And then that way you can take the S hook out. You can also use, this is why I kind of said pliers was an option too. You could use the pliers to hold on to it once you insert it into the head, and then just pull it up and twist it. Any way works. If you happen to use pliers or any other kind of tools like this, just be very careful with your doll and the resin so nothing scratches or harms your doll. So before we get started, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the strings that are in your doll. There's 2 loops. There's going to be one loop that holds basically the legs and the torso together, and then you have another loop of elastic that runs through the upper part of the torso here where the chest is, and it goes out to the body. Your long part torso here, if we can kind of just imagine it with the string, it's like this. So it's kind of like a V, I guess you could describe that as a V shape. And then these two loops that are down here are what's hooked into the bottom where the ankle has the little S hook down here. Your arms are one loop of elastic, and it's just one loop that goes just from side to side where the arms are. So let's talk about taking the doll apart. So you're gonna wanna be very careful just because you don't want to remove like an S hook and then it's gonna snap out and then pieces fly about. So there really isn't any like order. I don't really feel like there's an order as to like, oh, you should undo the legs or undo the arms first. But typically, I mean, I kind of usually go for the arms first sometimes, but either way, what you're going to want to do is that you're going to want to go to where your S hook is for them, and you're going to just want to slowly release it from that point. So we've got an S hook here, and so she's got like a floating wrist joint here. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to unhook it here. I'm also going to make sure that my pieces stay together. And I'm gonna just really, honestly, like I said, use this other string here. And I'm gonna just slowly and just very carefully let it kind of give way. And I'm gonna just hold on to here, and that way it doesn't, hold on to it here so that way it doesn't just like, just fly out. So again, I'm gonna go down here. And not all bodies like have, I mean, some of them it's just the S hook that's connected to the ankle on the bottom. It just so happens that this doll in particular has a floating piece at the bottom, but I have some dolls that don't have that, so I'm gonna go ahead and, like I said, kind of just let it go softly. I don't want it to just snap out. Again, we're gonna separate our pieces and make sure all the pieces that belong where they're supposed to go stay together. Also, just a fun bit while we're here, this would be a great time for you to clean your doll. They're in pieces, so I mean, this is a great time to check also to see like, okay, well, is everything, you know, still sealed? Do I need to reseal anything at this point? Is there anything that needs to be like deep cleaned? Is there staining on my doll? What do I need to do? So this would be a great time to kind of, you know, get out your handy dandy magic clean eraser and give them a good little scrub and just make sure they're nice and clean before you put him or her back together. So here's the pieces I was talking to you about. So if I take off the S hook, pull the strings out, here's that lovely long loop we were talking about. And then this guy for the arms, same thing, just pull it out. And there's our arms. So we had two loops, one for the arm and one for the legs. Don't throw these away yet. What I like to do is that when I'm putting in the new string, two things I want to do. One, I want to compare and make sure that it's like a similar thickness to make sure I'm putting in the right and proper string. Elastic that is too thin might not give it enough strength, so you do want to make sure that you come very close to what was already inside of the doll. And then two, the other thing I check for is how long the previous piece was. The new elastic that you cut is going to be the same length as this old one that you have inside of here, so it's a good guide to go off of. Another great thing you can do too is hot glue suede at this point. I mean, your doll's already in pieces, so if you feel like hot glue sueding is something you might want to dip into, I would definitely take advantage of this time since they're in pieces and give that a go too. If you are curious about how to hot glue suede your doll, please feel free to check out my other video. I'll put it in the cards so that way you can check that one out too. Okay, so now that all my pieces are clean, I think it is time to restring and put her back together. So, step one, let's go ahead and give her the proper elastic because I have a whole bunch of elastic here and I need to make sure that I have the correct millimeter size elastic. So I'm going to compare, make sure the one that I have for replacement looks good. And I'm going to make sure to cut my pieces to match the length. Alright, so we have the old elastic, which is this loop right here, and my new elastic, which is right here. So I'm just gonna basically see and make sure that I'm going to do it the same size, about the same size here, but I might make it just a tiny bit smaller. Like, I'm not even talking about like an inch or anything like that. I mean just like a hit, like a smidge. Just because, I mean, this was already fitted for the body, and I mean, the elastic doesn't stretch out that much to where it's like super like, now it's a crazy long string inside the body. Here's the end of the new and old elastic. So instead of tying my knot like exactly where this one is, I might just do it like underneath it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna literally twist the string this way, and I'm going to pull it through here. I have no idea what this knot is called, but this kind of knot to where both of them go through together. I'm gonna remeasure here and make sure it's not too drastically low. That is drastically lower, so that is way too. So I'm gonna pull up my knot, and that's more where I want it. So the old elastic knot is this one here. My new elastic knot is this one here. All right, so where do we begin? Typically, I usually like to do the arms first. It really doesn't matter. You can do either one first. I'm pretty sure people have their preferences out there, but I'm going to be doing the arms first, just because I mean it's not too hard to do. We can do that. So what we're gonna do is that we are going to take our elastic that is ready to go for the arms, and we're going to feed it through the loops. So you may or may not, depending on how big the hole is here, because mine is pretty small here, you might not be able to get, if you already made a knot, through it. If your armhole is large enough to where you can fit it through, then just needle and thread it, man. Just throw it in there. But mine, I'm gonna have to actually work from the inside out because she's a little bit too thin on the armholes here. All right, so we're gonna pull this out in the middle here. So you can go ahead and put this part, one of your armholes there to kind of keep it in place. You're gonna wanna make sure that this knot is as centered as can be. You don't want it to be near the arm joint or anything like that. As much as you can get it to the center, the better. If you need to do like some shifting around, you can do that. I'll show you right here. So like, for example, if this was not centered all the way, I mean, you can just play with it a little bit until it gets put into the center as much as possible. Again, I'm using like a threading method. I mean, there's people that use different tools. I just like doing it this way because it's just convenient. I can literally just put the strings through and then just feed it through and then pull it out. For the next challenge, the feet. Okay, so what we're gonna wanna do is that we're gonna want to feed it through the neck and have it already with our S hook. So we're gonna put our S hook on and we're gonna feed these two strings, the two loops, to the legs. Okay, so we are strung tighter, a little bit tighter, and it's about to get even tighter, but I can already tell this is already helping her immensely because I couldn't sit her up without her just plopping back down. So the extra next tough part for you is going to be putting this back through the head. If you are having difficulties and it is just not pulling through, you might have to make this a little bit, essentially making your loop a tad bit longer, which is why I usually try to keep it to its original length that it has, and I just make it just a tiny bit like shorter. So that way I'm not having to struggle so much putting the head back on. And then I know that that it's gonna have tighter and better elastic. So you're gonna wanna make sure that your S-hook is locked into place. Most heads have kind of like a crosshair looking thing in the inside of their heads. Make sure that it's up and through and then seated where it needs to be. Also, you wanna make sure that any excess strings or anything like that are safely tucked into the head before you put your head cap back on. She is strung so nicely now. I feel like she's gonna be a lot better with her sitting on my shelf because she kept on flopping backwards. And it's gonna help her posing all around. Oh yeah, dude, because her knees were like so crazy before. So yeah, this is great. 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10. So I hope this helped anybody that had questions about restringing dolls. You can check out my Amazon list for some recommended items for restringing dolls. Again, the forceps are such a lifesaver. I'm just really sad that I don't have mine with me. They're in storage. But literally they're like $6 or something like that on Amazon. So feel free to check out my list. Again, feel free to check out my blog also, where I have a in-depth step-by-step article on how to restring dolls in case you want something written down. I hope you guys have a dolly-tastic day. I will see you guys in another video next week, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!